The fluorescent lights of Rosie's diner hummed their tired electric song, the same monotonous tune they'd been singing for the past 6 years. Claire Dawson had learned to tune it out, the way she'd learned to tune out most things in her life. At 2:47 a.m. on a Wednesday that felt no different from any other Wednesday, she moved through her closing routine with the mechanical precision of someone who'd given up expecting anything to change. The diner sat on the corner of 5th and Marshall in downtown Portland, Oregon, a relic from the 1960s that somehow kept clinging to existence despite the craft coffee shops and trendy bistros that had slowly devoured the neighborhood. Red vinyl booths, checkered floor tiles, a jukebox that hadn't worked since 2018, the kind of place where people came when they had nowhere else to go, or when they were running from something they couldn't name. Claire understood that feeling intimately. She wiped down the counter with a cloth that had been white once, maybe a decade ago, and glanced at the clock. 15 minutes until she could lock up. 15 minutes until she could walk the 8 blocks to her studio apartment, peel off her uniform that smelled like coffee and old grease, and collapse into bed. Then she'd wake up in 6 hours and do it all over again. 28 years old, and this was her life. Through the wide windows, the city sprawled out in shades of amber streetlight and deep shadow. October in Portland meant early darkness, the kind that settled into your bones and made you forget what warmth felt like. Rain had fallen earlier, leaving the streets slick and reflective, turning the city into a watercolor painting of itself. "You doing okay there, Claire?" She turned to find Eddie Martinez, one of the 3 remaining customers, watching her with concern in his weathered eyes. Eddie was 63, a retired postal worker who came in 4 nights a week because his apartment felt too empty after his wife passed. He always ordered the same thing, black coffee and apple pie, and he always left a $5 tip on a $7 bill. "I'm fine, Eddie, just tired." She forced a smile. "You want a refill before I shut down the coffee?" "Nah, I'm good. Getting too old to be drinking caffeine this late anyway." He slid out of his booth, leaving his usual tip under the empty plate. "You be careful walking home, all right? City's been weird lately." Claire nodded, though she barely registered his words. The city was always weird. That was just how cities were. The other 2 customers, a young couple who'd been arguing in hushed, tense whispers for the past hour, finally stood to leave. The woman's mascara had left dark trails down her cheeks. The man paid without looking at Claire, and they walked out into the night separately, heading in opposite directions. And then Claire was alone. She began the closing checklist, her hands moving through tasks they'd performed thousands of times. Wipe down the soda machine, check the register, stack the menus, turn off the grill. Her mind wandered, as it always did in these quiet moments, to the life she'd imagined for herself once upon a time. There had been art school applications, thick envelopes full of hope and charcoal sketches. There had been a scholarship offer from Seattle, a future that shimmered with possibility. And then, there had been her mother's diagnosis. Stage 4, they'd said. And suddenly all those dreams had folded up like paper cranes and drifted away. That was 7 years ago. Her mother had fought for 18 months before finally letting go. And somehow, Claire had never managed to pick up those dreams again. They'd become too heavy, too distant. The waitressing job that was supposed to be temporary had calcified into permanence. Now she was just here, existing, breathing, wiping down counters at 3 in the morning. The door chimed. Claire looked up, irritation flashing through her exhaustion. They were closed, or near enough that it didn't matter. She'd already started breaking down the words died in her throat. A man stood in the doorway, and even from across the diner, Claire could see that something was catastrophically wrong. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. His expensive-looking gray suit was torn and darkened with moisture, but it wasn't rainwater. It was blood. So much blood. He gripped the doorframe with one hand, his knuckles white, his whole body swaying like a building in an earthquake. His other hand pressed against his side, and blood, dark and thick, seeped between his fingers, dripping onto Rosie's checkered floor. "Please," he said, and his voice was rough gravel, barely above a whisper. "Help me." Then his knees buckled. Claire's body moved before her mind caught up. She vaulted over the counter, something she'd never done in 6 years, and caught him before he hit the ground. His weight nearly took them both down. He was solid muscle beneath the ruined suit, and he was burning up with fever. "Jesus Christ," she breathed, struggling to keep him upright. "What happened to you?" His eyes, gray, she noticed absurdly, the color of storm clouds, focused on her face with desperate intensity. "Not safe," he managed. "They're coming. I shouldn't have." Okay, just Claire maneuvered him toward the nearest booth, her waitressing muscles straining with his weight. Just sit down. I'll call 911. No! His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. No police, no hospitals. They'll find me. He coughed and blood flecked his lips. Please, please, I just need... He didn't finish the sentence. His eyes rolled back and he slumped against the vinyl booth unconscious. Claire stood frozen for 3 endless seconds, her heart hammering so hard she could hear her pulse in her ears. Her rational mind screamed at her to call for help, to get as far away from this man as possible, to run. But her eyes caught on his face, younger than she'd initially thought, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features softened by pain and exhaustion. There was a scar along his jawline, old and faded, and there was something in the set of his mouth, even unconscious, that spoke of loneliness so profound it made her chest ache. She'd seen that loneliness before, every morning in her bathroom mirror. Claire's hands trembled as she lifted his jacket to examine the wound. A deep gash along his rib cage, maybe 4 inches long. Knife wound, probably. She'd seen enough crime dramas to recognize it. He needed stitches, antibiotics, professional medical care, but he'd begged her not to call anyone. And more importantly, who had done this to him? Who was coming? As if in answer, headlights swept across the diner windows. Claire's stomach dropped. A black SUV rolled slowly past, moving at a crawl, clearly searching for something, for someone. The tinted windows reflected nothing but the night, but she could feel eyes scanning the street, predatory and patient. The SUV passed, but it didn't disappear. She watched it turn at the end of the block, circling back. They were looking for him, and they'd find him soon enough. Claire looked down at the unconscious man bleeding all over Eddie's favorite booth. She looked at the phone mounted on the wall behind the counter. She looked at the door, at the night beyond it, at the life of invisible safety she'd built by never taking risks, never standing out, never mattering to anyone. The SUV appeared again, closer this time. Damn it, Claire whispered. She grabbed a stack of clean dish towels from behind the counter and pressed them against his wound, eliciting a groan from somewhere deep in his chest. She needed to stop the bleeding. She needed to think. The man's eyes fluttered open. For a moment they were unfocused, confused. Then they sharpened, locked onto her face, and something like surprise crossed his features. You're still here, he said, his voice barely audible. I'm still here, Claire confirmed, pressing harder on the wound. And apparently I've lost my mind. Who are you? What did you do? Who's after you? He studied her face as if memorizing it. Dominic, he said finally. My name is Dominic Hale. The name meant nothing to her. Should it have? Okay, Dominic. What kind of trouble are you in? A ghost of a smile touched his blood-stained lips. The permanent kind. The SUV passed again. This time it stopped directly in front of the diner. Claire's breath caught. Through the window she could see the driver's door opening. A man in dark clothing emerged, his hand inside his jacket in a way that made every survival instinct Claire possessed scream danger. Back door? Dominic rasped, trying to push himself up. Is there a... Yes. Claire made a decision that would change everything, though she didn't know it yet. She hooked her arm under his shoulder, taking his weight again. Can you walk? Don't have much choice. They moved toward the kitchen, Dominic's legs barely cooperating, his breathing harsh and labored. Behind them, Claire heard the diner's front door rattle. Locked, thank God. She'd turned the deadbolt after the arguing couple left. But locked doors wouldn't stop these people for long. The kitchen was dim, lit only by the exit sign over the back door. Claire navigated through the familiar space, past the industrial stove and the steel prep tables where she'd spent countless hours of her life doing work that didn't matter to make money that wasn't enough to live on. Wait, Dominic said, stopping so suddenly they both nearly fell. You should let me go. They'll hurt you if... Shut up, Claire said, without any real heat. I don't know why I'm doing this, so don't give me time to think about it. The back door opened onto an alley that smelled like rain and garbage. The October air hit them like a slap, cold and sharp. Claire could hear shouting from the front of the diner now. They were breaking in. Which way? She asked. Dominic pointed left, toward the maze of service roads and back alleys that threaded through downtown Portland. That way. They'll have the main streets covered. They stumbled forward, and Claire felt the enormity of what she was doing crash over her. She was helping a stranger, a bleeding, dangerous stranger, escape from people who clearly wanted him dead. She was throwing away every ounce of the anonymous safety she'd cultivated. She was, for the first time in 7 years, choosing something. The alley opened onto a narrow side street. Sodium lights cast everything in sickly yellow. Dominic's blood left a trail behind them, dark spots on dark pavement. They needed to move faster, but he could barely stay on his feet. "There," Dominic said, nodding toward an alcove between buildings. "Just for a minute. Need to." He sagged against the brick wall, his face gray with pain. Claire pressed the now soaked towels against his wound. Her hands were covered in his blood. Her uniform was covered in his blood. There was no going back from this. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "What are you? Drug dealer, gangster, what?" Dominic's gray eyes met hers, and there was something ancient in them, something that had seen too much darkness for too long. "I run enterprises in this city, some legal, most not." He coughed, grimacing. "And I made enemies of people who don't forgive. So you're a criminal?" "Yes." "The people after you? Worse criminals." Claire should have been terrified. Some part of her was, but another part, a part she didn't recognize, was oddly calm. "Why should I help you?" "You shouldn't." Dominic's gaze didn't waver. "You should walk away right now, forget you ever saw me." "That's probably good advice. But you're not going to take it." It wasn't a question. Claire thought about Eddie and his empty apartment, about the arguing couple who'd left separately, about her own studio apartment where she lived alone because getting close to people meant they could leave, like her mother had left, like everyone eventually left. She thought about the art school applications she'd never sent after her mother died, about the dreams she'd carefully folded away, about 28 years of playing it safe and invisible. "No," she said, "I'm not." Dominic studied her face, as if seeing something unexpected. "Why?" Claire didn't have a good answer. "I don't know." "Because you asked me to? Because you look like you need help and I'm tired of people not helping each other? Because I'm probably having some kind of breakdown?" Despite everything, the blood, the pain, the danger, Dominic almost laughed. "Those are terrible reasons." "Yeah, well, I'm a waitress, not a philosopher." She glanced back toward the diner. They needed to keep moving. "Can you walk?" "Have to." They pushed on, deeper into the labyrinth of Portland's industrial district. The buildings here were older, some abandoned, all wearing the city's grime like a second skin. Claire knew these streets better than Dominic probably expected. She'd taken long walks through here when her mother was dying, needing to escape the suffocating smell of hospitals and grief. Behind them, she heard engines, multiple vehicles now, fanning out to search. "My apartment," Claire said suddenly. "It's about 10 blocks from here, through the warehouse district. They won't know to look there." "Too dangerous for you," Dominic objected, though his voice was weakening. "If they find me at your place, then we don't let them find you." Claire tightened her grip on him. "Come on, we stay in the shadows." They moved like ghosts through the sleeping city, past shuttered storefronts and empty parking lots, past the homeless encampment under the Morrison Bridge, where a few people watched them pass with knowing, careful eyes that saw everything and said nothing, past the 24-hour convenience store where the clerk was too absorbed in his phone to notice 2 people stumbling by, one of them bleeding out. Dominic grew heavier with each block, his weight pulling at Claire's shoulders. He was fading. She could feel it. Whatever adrenaline had kept him moving was burning out. "Stay with me," she urged. "Don't you dare pass out again." Wasn't planning on it, but his words slurred together. "Talk to me. Tell me something. Anything. Just stay conscious." "Like what?" "I don't know. Why did they do this to you?" Dominic was quiet for so long Claire thought he might not answer. Then, "I trusted someone I shouldn't have. Made a deal with people who don't honor deals. Thought I was smarter than I was." He coughed again, and Claire felt his body shudder. Classic mistake. We all make those. "Yeah? What's yours?" Claire thought about her life, about the slow calcification of dreams, about becoming invisible, thinking that staying safe was the same as being alive. Dominic's gray eyes found hers in the darkness. "That's a good one." They turned onto Clare Street, a narrow road lined with old brick apartment buildings that had been up and coming for 20 years. Her building was the third one down, with its faded green awning and broken intercom system that the landlord kept promising to fix. They were almost to the entrance when a door opened across the street. Claire froze. Mr. Chen, the elderly man from 4B who had insomnia and spent his nights watching the neighborhood from his window, stood in his doorway in a bathrobe. His eyes went wide as he took in the scene. Claire, covered in blood, supporting a half-conscious man. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mr. Chen stepped back inside and closed his door without a word. Claire let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Tomorrow, there would be questions. Tomorrow, she might regret everything. But tomorrow was hours away, and Dominic was still bleeding. She got them inside the building, past the mailboxes that hadn't been vandalized yet this month, up the stairs that creaked with every step. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor at the end of the hall. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her keys. The door swung open to reveal her life, a studio apartment that was small but clean, with second-hand furniture and walls covered in sketches she'd drawn over the years. Cityscapes mostly, Portland from every angle, in every season, the dream she'd kept alive in charcoal and graphite. Claire maneuvered Dominic to her bed, the only bed, which meant she'd be sleeping on the couch if they survived the night. He collapsed onto it with a groan that sounded like relief and agony mixed together. She turned on the lamp and the soft light revealed just how bad things were. His suit was destroyed, the white shirt beneath it more red than white now. His face was pale, lips tinged with blue. He needed a hospital, but hospitals meant questions, and questions meant police, and police meant whoever was hunting him would find him. "I need to see the wound," Claire said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm going to have to cut your shirt off." Dominic nodded weakly. Claire found scissors in her kitchen drawer and returned to the bed. Her hands didn't shake as she cut away the expensive fabric, revealing the body beneath. He was muscular in the way of someone who'd spent real time working out, not just for appearance but for function. There were other scars, old ones, telling stories of other violences survived. And there was the wound, long, deep, still bleeding sluggishly. "I'm going to need supplies," Claire said, thinking out loud. "Antiseptic, bandages, something for the pain. There's a pharmacy 3 blocks from here. They're open 24 hours. "Too risky," Dominic said. "They might be watching." "Then what do you suggest? Because you're going to bleed out if I don't—" "Under the jacket," he interrupted. "Inside pocket. There's a phone. Call the last number. Tell them where we are. They'll bring what we need." Claire found the phone, surprisingly intact given everything he'd been through. The screen was cracked but functional. She pulled up the call log. The last number had no name attached, just digits. "Who is this?" "Someone who owes me his life." Dominic's eyes were starting to unfocus again. "Tell him Dominic needs help. Tell him to come alone. Tell him to be careful." Claire stared at the phone. This was it. The moment she either committed fully to this insanity or backed out while she still could. She could still call 911. She could still save herself. But she looked at Dominic, at this dangerous man who'd stumbled into her life and upended everything, and she realized she'd already made her choice back in the diner. Maybe even before that. Maybe she'd been waiting years for something, anything, to break the pattern of her invisible life. She pressed call. The phone rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Yeah? Is this—" Claire paused, realizing she didn't know how to phrase this. "Dominic sent me. He needs help. He's hurt badly." Silence on the other end, heavy and evaluating. Then, "Who is this?" "Someone who's helping him. Look, I don't have time to explain. He's been stabbed. He's losing blood. He said you'd bring supplies. Where are you?" Claire gave her address, then added what Dominic had told her. He said come alone. "Be careful." 20 minutes, the voice said, and the line went dead. Claire set the phone down and looked at Dominic. His eyes were closed now, his breathing shallow. She pressed her fingers to his neck, feeling for a pulse. It was there, rapid and thready, but there. "Don't you dare die," she whispered. "Not after making me do all this." Outside, Portland slept on, unaware that in a small 3rd-floor apartment a waitress with forgotten dreams was keeping a dying man alive, and that by morning, nothing would ever be the same again. The clock on her nightstand read 3:47 a.m. Dawn was still hours away. The 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Claire sat on the edge of her bed, watching Dominic's chest rise and fall in shallow, irregular rhythms. She'd found a clean towel and was pressing it against his wound, but the blood kept coming, soaking through layer after layer of fabric. Her hands were stained dark red, and she'd stopped trying to wipe them clean. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the walls pressing in with the weight of what she'd done. Every sound from the street below made her jump. Car doors slamming, voices passing by, the distant wail of sirens that might or might not be related to the man bleeding on her bed. She glanced at the window. 4th-floor apartment, too high to jump, too exposed to hide. If Dominic's enemies found them here, There would be nowhere to run. Claire, Dominic's voice was barely a whisper. She leaned closer. I'm here. Save your strength. If they come before, he coughed, wincing. Before my guy gets here, leave me. Just go. We've had this conversation. I'm serious. His gray eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that cut through the pain. You don't owe me anything. This isn't your fight. Claire thought about that. He was right, objectively. She didn't owe him anything. She didn't even know him. 6 hours ago, she'd never heard the name Dominic Hale, and her biggest concern had been whether she'd have enough tip money to pay her electric bill on time. Now she was harboring a fugitive and possibly facing down whatever enemies had put that knife in his ribs. Maybe it's not about owing, she said quietly. Maybe I'm just tired of being the person who looks away. Dominic studied her face and something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Claire checked the wound again. Still bleeding, but slower now. Maybe. Tell me about the person we called. Can we trust him? Marcus. With my life. Have before. Dominic's breathing was labored. Known him 15 years. He was a kid when I found him. 17, stealing from one of my operations. Should have made an example of him. Instead, I gave him a job. Why? He reminded me of myself at that age. Desperate. Angry. Smart enough to be dangerous. Dominic closed his eyes. Turned out I was right. He's the only person in my organization I trust completely. Claire absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with the man in front of her. A criminal, yes. He'd admitted that freely. But the way he talked about Marcus suggested something more complex than the cartoonish villain her mind wanted to create. What kind of operations? She asked. Not sure she wanted the answer. The kind that pay better than waitressing. A ghost of dark humor crossed his face. You really want to know? I'm already in this deep. Might as well understand what I'm risking my life for. Dominic was quiet for a moment, as if weighing how much truth to tell her. I run protection services mostly. Gambling. Some import-export that doesn't ask too many questions. I don't deal drugs, if that's what you're wondering. And I have rules about civilians. What kind of rules? They don't get hurt. Ever. Anyone who works for me knows that's the line you don't cross. His voice was firm despite his weakness. It's why I have enemies. Some people think rules are for the weak. Claire thought about the SUV circling the diner, about the methodical way they'd been searching. The people who did this to you? The Volkov brothers. Russian outfit that moved in 2 years ago. They want my territory, my connections, and they don't care who they hurt to get them. Dominic's jaw tightened. I refused to partner with them. This was their response. Before Claire could ask more, a soft knock came at the door. 3 quick taps, pause, 2 more taps. A pattern. That's him, Dominic said. Claire moved to the door, her heart hammering. She looked through the peephole and saw a tall black man in his early 30s, wearing dark jeans and a leather jacket. He was alone, as instructed, and his eyes scanned the hallway with professional wariness. She opened the door. Marcus took her in with one sweeping glance. The blood on her clothes, the exhaustion in her face, the strange determination in her eyes. Then he stepped inside, carrying a black duffel bag that looked heavy and moved with purpose. You the waitress? He asked, his voice the same deep rumble from the phone. Claire? And yes. He nodded once, then moved past her to the bed. His entire demeanor shifted when he saw Dominic, worry breaking through the professional mask for just a moment. Boss? What the hell happened? Ambush. The meet with Volkov was a setup. Dominic tried to sit up and failed. How bad is it out there? Bad. They've got people on every corner downtown. Police scanners going crazy. Reports of shots fired near the industrial district. Multiple vehicles involved. Marcus unzipped the duffel, revealing medical supplies that looked distinctly hospital grade. We need to get you somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look. Can't move him yet, Claire interjected. He's lost too much blood. He needs to be stabilized first. Marcus looked at her with new assessment. You a nurse or something? Or something. I took some EMT classes a few years back. Before, she stopped, not wanting to explain about her mother, about abandoned dreams. I know enough to know he shouldn't be moved yet. She's right, Dominic said. Marcus, this is Claire. She pulled me out of that diner, got me here, saved my life. Something passed between the two men. A communication beyond words. Marcus nodded slowly, then turned back to Claire with what might have been respect. All right, let's see what we're working with. The next 30 minutes were a crash course in emergency medicine. Marcus had brought everything. Antiseptic, surgical thread, needles, bandages, antibiotics, even blood clotting powder. He worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before, his hand steady as he cleaned and assessed the wound. Knife went deep but missed anything vital, he said, mostly to himself. You got lucky, boss. 2 inches to the left and we'd be having a very different conversation. Claire held the flashlight from her phone, providing additional light while Marcus worked. She watched his hands suture the wound with practiced precision, each stitch careful and exact. Dominic stayed conscious through it all, his jaw clenched, refusing to show the pain she knew he must be feeling. You do this often? Claire asked Marcus. More than I'd like. He didn't look up from his work. Part of the job description. What exactly is your job? Right hand, problem solver. Occasionally field medic. Marcus tied off another stitch. Whatever the boss needs. Claire watched them interact. The easy familiarity. The unspoken understanding. This wasn't just employer and employee. This was family, in whatever way that word meant in their world. Claire, Dominic's voice pulled her attention. You should leave now. Marcus can take it from here. Get out of Portland for a few days. I'll make sure you're compensated for... I'm not leaving. Claire, I'm not leaving. She met his gaze steadily. We've established that I'm stubborn and probably crazy. Accept it and move on. Marcus made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. I like her, boss. That's not helpful, Marcus. Just saying. He finished the last stitch and began wrapping the wound with clean bandages. There. That should hold, but you need rest. Real rest. And antibiotics for at least a week. He pulled a bottle of pills from the duffel along with a bottle of prescription painkillers. Claire took them, reading the labels. Strong stuff. Hospital grade. How did you get all this? She asked. Better you don't know, Marcus replied. He stood, wiping his hands on an antiseptic cloth. Now we need to talk about next steps. They're going to find this place eventually. Maybe not tonight, but soon. How? Claire felt cold dread settle in her stomach. Nobody saw us. You sure about that? Marcus's eyes were kind but honest. Old man across the street, maybe? Security cameras you didn't notice? Trail of blood leading from the diner? Claire thought about Mr. Chen, about the route they'd taken through the city. She'd been so focused on getting Dominic to safety that she hadn't thought about covering their tracks. Even if they don't find you tonight, Marcus continued, they'll be looking tomorrow, and they have resources. These aren't street-level thugs, Claire. The Volkovs are connected, organized. They'll check hospitals, known associates, properties connected to the boss, and when they don't find him, they'll start looking wider. So what do we do? Marcus looked at Dominic, who had his eyes closed but was clearly listening. We need a safe house. Somewhere off the grid. I've got a place in Gresham. Too obvious, Dominic interrupted without opening his eyes. They know about Gresham. They know about all the usual spots. Then where? We can't stay here. Silence fell over the apartment. Claire looked between the two men, realizing that for all their experience, all their planning, they were stuck. The usual playbook didn't apply when the entire city was hunting you. An idea formed in her mind. Crazy, probably. But then again, she'd already crossed that line hours ago. I have a place, she said slowly. My aunt's cabin. It's about 40 miles outside Portland up in the mountains near Mount Hood. She left it to me when she died 3 years ago. I haven't been there in over a year. Nobody knows about it. It's not in my name. Still in the estate. No utilities except a well and a generator. Both men looked at her. That could work, Marcus said thoughtfully. Remote enough that they won't stumble across it. No paper trail connecting it to you or the boss. Can he make the drive? Claire asked. 40 miles is a long way in his condition. It's a longer way to hell, Dominic said, opening his eyes. Which is where I'll end up if we stay here. He looked at Claire. You're sure about this? Once we use that cabin, they might eventually trace it to you. Your life will never be completely safe again. Claire thought about her life. The diner, the studio apartment, the careful invisibility she'd cultivated. She thought about her mother's last words. Don't just exist, baby. Live. She'd been existing for 7 years. Maybe it was time to try living, even if living was dangerous. I'm sure, she said. Marcus checked his watch. It's 4:35. We move now. We can be at the cabin before sunrise. Roads will be empty, easier to spot if we're being followed. We'll need a car, Dominic said. Can't use anything registered to either of us. I've got a rental. Paid cash, fake ID. It's parked 2 blocks away. Marcus was already repacking his duffel. I'll bring it around to the alley behind the building, less visible than the front entrance. Take my car keys, Claire said, grabbing them from the hook by the door. The blue Honda Civic in the parking lot. Registration's in the glove box. If they're watching for your vehicles, maybe it'll throw them off for a while. Marcus took the keys, nodding approval. Smart. Okay, I'll be back in 10 minutes. Boss, can you walk? Have to, Dominic said, which wasn't really an answer. Marcus left, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone used to operating in shadows. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly Claire was alone with Dominic again. She sat down on the bed beside him, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her hands were still stained with his blood. Her uniform was ruined. Her entire life had been upended in the space of a few hours. Are you scared? Dominic asked quietly. Claire considered the question. Yes, but not as much as I probably should be. Why not? I don't know. Maybe because I've been scared for 7 years. Scared of failing, scared of trying, scared of mattering. This is a different kind of scared. She searched for the right words. It's the kind that makes you feel alive. Dominic's gray eyes studied her face. You're a strange woman, Claire Dawson, says the mob boss who stumbled into a diner at 3 a.m. Fair point. He tried to smile, but it turned into a grimace. Claire, what I said before, about compensation. I meant it. Whatever you've lost by helping me, whatever you need, I'll make sure you're taken care of. I don't want your money, Dominic. Then what do you want? Claire thought about that. What did she want? She'd spent so long not wanting anything, not letting herself hope, that the question felt foreign. I don't know yet, she admitted, but I'll figure it out. A soft knock. Marcus's pattern. Claire opened the door to find him slightly out of breath. Car's ready, but we've got a problem. Black SUV just turned onto the street. Could be random. Could be them. Dominic was already trying to stand, his face going pale with the effort. Claire rushed to support him. Can you make it down 3 flights of stairs? She asked. Watch me. They moved into the hallway, Marcus leading, Claire supporting Dominic's weight. Every step seemed to cost him, but he kept moving through sheer force of will. They made it down 1 flight, then another. On the 2nd floor landing, they heard voices below. Men's voices, speaking in Russian. They froze. Marcus held up a hand. Wait. The voices grew louder, echoing in the stairwell. At least 2 men, maybe 3, coming up. Service stairs, Claire whispered, pointing to a door at the end of the hall. Leads to the basement. There's a storage exit to the alley. They moved as quickly and quietly as possible. Behind them, the voices reached the 3rd floor. They were checking apartments, knocking on doors. How long until they reached hers? The service stairs were narrow and dark, lit only by a single flickering bulb. Dominic nearly fell twice, but each time he caught himself, pushing forward with grim determination. Claire could feel his body trembling with effort. They reached the basement, a dimly lit maze of storage units and old furniture. The air smelled like mildew and forgotten things. Marcus led them through the labyrinth to a metal door marked, Emergency Exit Only. Alarm? He asked Claire. Hasn't worked in years. Marcus pushed it open. Blessed silence. No alarm. They emerged into the alley behind the building, where a gray sedan waited with its engine running. Above them, lights were coming on in Claire's apartment. They'd found it. Go, go, Marcus urged, helping Dominic into the back seat. Claire climbed in beside him while Marcus got behind the wheel. The sedan pulled away from the curb just as figures appeared in the alley entrance behind them. Shouts in Russian, the sound of running feet. But Marcus was already turning the corner, accelerating smoothly into the pre-dawn darkness. No screeching tires, no dramatic chase. Just a gray sedan blending into the empty streets of Portland, carrying 3 people who shouldn't exist. Claire looked back through the rear window. No headlights following. Not yet. Everyone okay? Marcus asked, eyes on the road. Define okay, Dominic said, but there was dark humor in his voice. He was leaning against Claire, his weight heavy, his breathing labored. She could feel his heart racing against her shoulder. We made it out, Claire said. That's something. They drove through the sleeping city, past the closed shops and dark windows, past the waterfront where the Willamette River reflected the city lights like scattered diamonds, past the bridges that connected one shore to another, solid and permanent, while everything else in Claire's life had suddenly become uncertain and fluid. Marcus took a winding route, doubling back several times, checking mirrors constantly. Professional paranoia, born from experience. I think we're clear, he said finally. No tail that I can see. Doesn't mean they're not looking, Dominic replied. Volkov has resources. They'll figure out we left the city. They'll set up checkpoints, watch the highways. Then we take the back roads, Claire said. The route to the cabin, most of it's through Forest Service roads, barely marked. It'll take longer, but it's safer. Marcus nodded. Direct us. As they left the city limits, the buildings gave way to trees, and the streetlights gave way to darkness. The city sounds, sirens, traffic, the ambient hum of urban life, faded behind them. They were entering wilderness now, the ancient forests of Oregon that had stood long before the city was built, and would stand long after it fell. Claire guided Marcus through the turns, the route coming back to her from memory. She'd driven this path dozens of times in the months after her aunt died, drawn to the cabin's solitude, its distance from everything that hurt. Dominic had gone quiet beside her, his breathing shallow but steady. She glanced down and saw his eyes were closed, his face peaceful despite the pain he must be feeling. Is he asleep? Marcus asked, checking the rearview mirror. I think so. The painkillers must have kicked in. Good. He needs rest. Marcus was quiet for a moment then. Thank you. For what you did. For what you're doing. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do, the boss. He's saved my life more times than I can count. Gave me a future when I had none. But he's got this habit of thinking he has to handle everything alone. He doesn't let people help him. Doesn't let people in. Marcus's eyes met hers in the mirror. Whatever reason you helped him, whatever crazy impulse made you do it, I'm grateful. Claire didn't know what to say to that. She looked down at Dominic, at this dangerous man who'd crashed into her life, and wondered what she'd really done. Had she saved him? Or had he, in some strange way, saved her? They drove deeper into the mountains as the sky began to lighten at the edges. Dawn was coming, turning the darkness to gray, then to pale gold. The trees stood like sentinels on either side of the narrow road, their branches forming a canopy overhead. Turn here, Claire said, pointing to an almost invisible break in the trees. Marcus turned onto a dirt road that was barely more than 2 tire tracks in the earth. The sedan bounced and jolted, and Dominic stirred, wincing. Almost there, Claire said softly. Just hold on a little longer. The cabin appeared through the trees like something from a fairy tale, small and wooden, with a green roof and a wraparound porch. It sat in a clearing surrounded by pines with a view down the mountain toward the valley below. Isolated. Perfect. Marcus parked behind the cabin, out of sight from the road. He turned off the engine, and sudden silence enveloped them. No city sounds here, just wind in the trees and the distant call of an early rising bird. We made it, Claire said, and felt the truth of it wash over her. They'd made it through the night. They'd escaped the hunters. They'd found sanctuary, however temporary. But as she looked at Dominic's pale face, at the blood that had seeped through his fresh bandages, she knew the hardest part was just beginning. The sun was rising over Mount Hood, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. A new day, a new beginning. Or possibly, Claire thought as she helped Marcus carry Dominic into the cabin, the beginning of the end. Only time would tell which. The cabin smelled like dust and old memories. Claire pushed open the door, Marcus supporting most of Dominic's weight now. The interior was dark, shadows pooling in corners where sunlight hadn't reached in months. She fumbled for the light switch, then remembered. No electricity. The generator was outside and she hadn't run it in over a year. There's a generator, she said, but it's loud. If we use it, we don't, Marcus finished. Sound carries in these mountains. Can't risk it. Dominic made a sound that might have been agreement or just pain. His head hung forward, consciousness slipping away again. Couch, Claire directed, pointing to the worn sofa against the far wall. Get him there. They maneuvered Dominic across the room. He collapsed onto the cushions with a groan that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. In the gray dawn light filtering through the windows, Claire could see how bad he looked. Skin pale as paper, lips almost blue, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. We need light, Marcus said, already moving. Candles, lanterns, kitchen cupboard, top shelf. Claire was pulling blankets from the closet, thick quilts her aunt had made decades ago. There's a first aid kit in the bathroom, too. Not much, but better than nothing. Marcus disappeared into the kitchen. Claire heard him opening cabinets, the strike of a match. Warm light bloomed as he lit oil lanterns. Her aunt had kept them for power outages. The cabin gradually revealed itself. One main room with a kitchenette, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a loft bedroom reached by a ladder. Simple. Isolated. Safe. Claire knelt beside the couch, checking Dominic's pulse. Still rapid, but stronger than before. The stitches Marcus had done were holding, but blood had seeped through the bandages during the drive. "We need to change these," she said. Marcus returned with the lanterns, setting them around the room. The flickering light cast dancing shadows on the log walls, making everything feel ancient and unreal. He brought his medical duffel and knelt on Dominic's other side. "Boss," Marcus said, his voice firm, "need you to stay with us." Dominic's eyes fluttered open. They were unfocused at first, confused, then slowly sharpened. "Where?" "The cabin," Claire said. "We're safe. For now." "Marcus?" "Right here." Dominic tried to sit up and failed, frustration crossing his face. Claire had seen that look before, on her mother in those last months when her body wouldn't obey her mind anymore. The helplessness of it. "Don't," she said gently. "You need to rest. Let us take care of you." Something in her tone made him stop fighting. He settled back, his gray eyes finding hers in the lamplight. "You should have left me. We've established I'm bad at doing what I should do." Claire began carefully unwrapping the blood-soaked bandages. "Marcus, can you get some water? There's a well pump outside. The bucket should be on the porch." Marcus nodded and headed out, leaving them alone. The cabin fell into quiet, broken only by the sound of their breathing and the soft creak of old wood settling. Claire worked carefully, peeling away layers of gauze, revealing the wound beneath. The stitches held, but the flesh around them was angry and inflamed. "It's infected," she said, worry tightening her voice. "Probably." Dominic watched her face. "How bad?" "Bad enough that you need antibiotics," which Marcus brought. "So we're going to pump you full of them and hope for the best." Not exactly a reassuring medical assessment. "I'm a waitress, not a doctor. You get what you get." But she smiled slightly, trying to ease the tension. Dominic almost smiled back. "Fair enough." Marcus returned with a bucket of cold, clear water. Together they cleaned the wound again, applied antibiotic ointment, wrapped it in fresh bandages. Dominic bore it all in silence, his jaw clenched, refusing to show the pain Claire knew he felt. When they finished, Marcus produced the antibiotics and painkillers. Dominic swallowed them dry, grimacing. "Okay," Marcus said, standing. "I'm going to do a perimeter check. Make sure we weren't followed. Check sight lines, find the best escape routes if we need them." "Always prepared for the worst," Dominic said. "That's why I'm still alive." Marcus looked at Claire. "You good here?" "I'll manage." After Marcus left, the cabin felt even smaller, more intimate. Claire pulled a chair close to the couch and sat down, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her body ached. Her mind felt fuzzy, but she couldn't sleep yet. Not until she was sure Dominic was stable. "You don't have to stay," Dominic said quietly. Marcus is doing perimeter checks. Someone needs to watch you." Claire pulled one of the quilts over her lap. The cabin was cold, the kind of mountain cold that seeped into your bones. "Besides, I'm not tired." "You're a terrible liar." "Add it to my list of failures." Dominic studied her for a long moment. "Tell me about them." "Your failures?" Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We don't have that much time. We have until Marcus gets back. Humor a dying man." "You're not dying." "Then humor a wounded one." Claire looked at him. This stranger who wasn't quite a stranger anymore. They'd crossed some invisible line in the past few hours, moved from separate orbits into something shared. She didn't understand it, but she felt it. "I was going to be an artist," she said finally. "That was the plan. Art school in Seattle, full scholarship. I was going to paint the city, show people beauty they'd stopped seeing, make something that mattered. What happened? My mother got sick. Cancer. Fast and brutal and expensive." Claire's hands twisted the quilt. "Someone had to take care of her. Someone had to pay the bills. So I got a job at Rosie's. Just temporary, I told myself. Just until Mom got better. But she didn't get better. No. 18 months later she was gone. And somehow the temporary job became permanent. The dreams became, I don't know, embarrassing, childish. I was 21 when she died. I'm 28 now. 7 years of wiping down counters and pretending tomorrow will be different." Dominic was quiet, but his eyes never left her face. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "Why didn't you go back to it, after she died?" Claire had asked herself that question 1,000 times. "I think I was afraid. Afraid I wasn't good enough anymore. Afraid I'd forgotten how to dream. It's easier to stay stuck than to try and fail. So you chose safety. I chose invisibility." She met his gaze. "I became someone who didn't matter." Couldn't disappoint anyone. Couldn't lose anything because I never had anything worth losing. Until tonight. Until tonight, Claire agreed. Outside the sun was fully up now, painting the forest in shades of green and gold. Birds were singing their morning songs. The world continuing on, unaware of the small drama unfolding in this forgotten cabin. Your turn, Claire said. Tell me how someone becomes what you are. Dominic's expression shifted, shadows crossing his face. You sure you want to know? I pulled you through half of Portland. I think I've earned some answers. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't respond. Then, I was 14 when my father died. He worked construction, fell 3 stories onto concrete, died instantly. My mother, she tried. Worked 2 jobs, barely kept us fed. I watched her kill herself slowly, working herself to death for pennies. Claire heard the echo of her own story in his words. Different details, same shape. When I was 16, I started running errands for a local crew. Small stuff at first, delivering packages, being a lookout. The money was better than anything legal offered. Way better. Dominic's voice was matter of fact, neither proud nor ashamed. I was good at it. Smart, careful, ruthless when I needed to be. By the time I was 25, I was running my own operation. Do you regret it? That's a complicated question. He shifted on the couch, wincing. I regret things I've done, choices I made, people I hurt. But the path itself? It kept my mother alive for 10 more years. Gave her a house, medical care, comfort. She died thinking I was a successful businessman. Never knew the truth. Would she have wanted to know? No. Which is why I never told her. His gray eyes found Claire's. We all make choices based on the information we have, the options available. You chose to care for your mother. I chose to provide for mine. Different methods, same motivation. Claire thought about that. She'd never considered her life and Dominic's as parallel before. One legal, one not. But strip away the surface, and the core was the same. People doing what they thought necessary to survive, to protect the ones they loved. The people after you, she said. The Volkovs. What do they want? Everything. My territory, my operations, my connections. But more than that, they want to prove a point, that the old rules don't matter anymore, that mercy is weakness. Dominic's voice hardened. I have lines I won't cross. They don't. That makes me an obstacle. So they tried to eliminate you. They thought they succeeded. I was supposed to die in that alley behind the restaurant where we were meeting. Quick and clean. But their guy hesitated just for a second. Long enough for me to fight back and run. To my diner. To your diner. Dominic's expression softened. Pure chance. Pure luck. Or maybe something else. Like what? I don't know. Fate? Destiny? I don't usually believe in that stuff. But then I stumbled into a diner at 3 in the morning and found a woman crazy enough to help me. Makes you wonder. Claire felt heat rise in her cheeks. I'm not that crazy. You're harboring a wanted man in a remote cabin, that's textbook crazy. Says the man who got stabbed meeting with Russian mobsters. Dominic actually laughed. A short, painful sound, but genuine. Fair point. The door opened and Marcus stepped inside, bringing cold air with him. Perimeter's clear. No signs of pursuit. We're good for now. How long is now? Dominic asked. Hard to say. They know you left the city. They'll be checking safe houses, known associates, medical facilities. But this place? Marcus looked around the cabin. No way they connected to you. We bought ourselves time. How much time? 48 hours, maybe. After that, they'll start looking wider. We need a plan. Dominic tried to sit up again, and this time Claire didn't stop him. He moved slowly, carefully, but managed to prop himself against the arm of the couch. His face was still too pale, but there was determination in his eyes. Marcus, I need you to go back to the city. Boss, listen. Someone needs to manage things, keep the organization from falling apart. If the Volkovs think I'm dead or gone, they'll move on our operations. We can't let that happen. And leave you here? Wounded? Marcus glanced at Claire, then back to Dominic. No disrespect, but she's a waitress, not a bodyguard. I'm aware of what she is. Dominic's voice was firm. And I'm aware of what needs to happen. The organization needs you visible. Needs to know leadership continues. I need you to be my hands and eyes while I recover. What if the Volkovs find you? Then Claire and I will handle it. Claire opened her mouth to object. Handle it how, exactly? But something in Dominic's expression stopped her. He was trusting her. Actually trusting her with his life, not just accepting her help. Marcus clearly wasn't happy. This is a bad idea. Most of my ideas lately have been bad. This one's necessary. Dominic leaned forward, intensity radiating from him despite his weakness. Marcus, I need you to do this. For me. For everyone depending on us. The two men stared at each other, a silent conversation happening in looks and micro-expressions. Finally, Marcus sighed. 48 hours. I'll keep things running. Put out the word that you're alive but recovering. Make it clear the organization's still operational. He pulled out his phone, the burner he'd been using. I'm leaving this with you. Untraceable. My new number's programmed in. Anything happens, you call. I will. Marcus looked at Claire. You sure about this? Was she? Nothing about this situation was sure, but she found herself nodding anyway. I'm sure. Keep him alive. Keep him hidden. Don't let him do anything stupid. Marcus handed her the phone, then pulled a handgun from his jacket. And take this. Claire stared at the weapon like it was a snake. I don't know how to use that. Safety here. Point and shoot. It's intuitive. Marcus set it on the table, then looked back at Dominic. Boss, don't die on me. Not planning on it. They clasped hands briefly, a gesture that spoke of years of shared history, of trust built through fire. Then Marcus was gone, the door closing behind him, the sound of his car engine fading into the distance. And suddenly, Claire and Dominic were alone, truly alone. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Claire looked at the gun on the table, at Dominic on the couch, at the cabin around them. This was real. This was happening. She was alone in the mountains with a wounded crime boss and a weapon she didn't know how to use. You okay? Dominic asked. Define okay. Claire laughed weakly. I just agreed to be your nursemaid and bodyguard despite having zero qualifications for either role. You've done pretty well so far. That was adrenaline. Now it's just me, you, and the very real possibility that dangerous people will eventually find us. She sat down heavily in the chair. What have I gotten myself into? Freedom, Dominic said quietly. Claire looked at him, surprised. What? You asked earlier why you helped me. Said you didn't know. Dominic's gray eyes were intense in the lamplight. But I think you do know. You helped me because you were tired of being invisible, tired of being safe. You wanted something, anything, to break the pattern. That's a lot of analysis from someone who's been bleeding for the past 6 hours. Doesn't make it wrong. He held her gaze. You saved my life, Claire. Not just physically, though that too. But you gave me something I haven't had in years. What? Someone who helped me without wanting something in return. Someone who saw me as just a person, not a boss, not a criminal, not a tool to be used. His voice was soft, but certain. You have no idea how rare that is in my world. Claire felt something shift in her chest. In my world, too. People saw the uniform, the waitress, not me. Then maybe we both needed this moment, this chaos. Dominic smiled slightly. Two people who'd forgotten how to be seen, suddenly visible to each other. Before Claire could respond, Dominic's body tensed. His face went pale, and he doubled over, coughing. When he pulled his hand away from his mouth, there was blood on his fingers. Dominic! Claire was at his side instantly, easing him back down. His skin was burning up. The fever had spiked. I'm fine, he managed. But his voice was weak. You're not fine. You're burning up. Claire pressed her hand to his forehead. He was furnace hot. The infection spreading. She grabbed the antibiotics, checking the dosage. He'd had 1 dose 3 hours ago. The instructions said every 6 hours. Too soon for another. We need to bring the fever down, she said, thinking frantically. Cold water, ice if we had it. Well, Dominic said weakly. Cold water anyway. Claire grabbed towels, filled a basin with water from the well. It was mountain cold, almost painful to touch. She wrung out a cloth and pressed it to Dominic's forehead, his neck, his chest. He shivered but didn't protest. Talk to me, she said, trying to keep him conscious. Tell me something. Anything. Like what? His voice was fading. Your first memory. Tell me your first memory. Dominic was quiet for a moment, his eyes closed. When he spoke, his voice was distant, dreamlike. Rain. I remember rain. I was maybe 4 years old, standing at a window, watching water run down the glass. My mother was behind me, humming something. I felt safe, warm, like nothing bad could ever happen. That's a good memory. Yeah. His eyes opened slightly. What about you? Claire thought back through the years. My aunt. The one who owned this cabin. She took me hiking when I was 6. We came up here, And there was this moment at sunrise where the whole world turned gold. She said, "Remember this, Claire. Remember that beauty exists." I think that's why I wanted to be an artist. To capture that moment. Maybe you still can. Maybe. Claire changed the cloth, pressing a fresh cold one to his forehead. "Stay with me, Dominic. Don't drift away." Trying. The hours passed in a blur. Claire cycled between cooling him down, checking his wound, making him drink water, and simply sitting beside him, her hand on his wrist, monitoring his pulse. The fever spiked and fell and spiked again. He drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes lucid, sometimes delirious. During one lucid moment he grabbed her hand. "Claire, if I don't make it, you're going to make it. But if I don't, tell Marcus. Tell him the offshore accounts. The numbers are in my office safe. Combination is my mother's birthday. He'll know what to do. You can tell him yourself. And tell him..." Dominic's grip tightened. "Tell him thank you. For everything. Dominic. And you." His eyes found hers, gray and intense even through the fever. "Thank you for seeing me. For being brave when you didn't have to be. For being exactly who you are." Claire felt tears burning her eyes. Don't talk like you're dying. You're not dying. Everyone dies eventually. Not tonight. I won't let you." She squeezed his hand back. "You said I was brave. Well, I'm using that bravery to keep you alive. So fight. Fight with me." Something in her voice seemed to reach him. Dominic nodded slightly, his jaw setting with determination. Okay. I'll fight." "Good." The afternoon faded into evening. The cabin grew dark, and Claire lit more lanterns. She made soup from cans she found in the cupboard. Her aunt had always kept supplies here, and managed to get some into Dominic. Not much, but something. Around 6 p.m. the fever finally broke. Claire was dozing in the chair when she felt his hand move under hers. She jolted awake to find Dominic watching her, his eyes clear for the first time in hours. "Hey," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Hey yourself." Relief flooded through her. "How do you feel?" "Like I got stabbed and then driven up a mountain." But there was a hint of humor in his tone. "How long was I out?" "In and out for about 12 hours. The fever was bad. But you brought it down." "We brought it down." Claire checked his forehead. Still warm but no longer burning. "You need to eat. Drink. Take more antibiotics." "Yes, nurse." She helped him sit up, propping pillows behind him. He moved stiffly, carefully, but with more strength than before. The color was returning to his face. While he ate soup and crackers, slowly, carefully, Claire stood and stretched. Her body ached from sitting in the chair for hours. Her back protested. But Dominic was alive, conscious, improving. That was all that mattered. "Come here," Dominic said. Claire turned. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She moved to sit on the edge of the couch. "Thank you," he said simply, "for not giving up on me. I told you I wouldn't. I know. But saying something and doing it." He shook his head slightly. "You could have called Marcus. Had him come back. Instead, you stayed. You fought for me." "Why?" Claire thought about her answer carefully. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. To think nobody cares if you live or die. And I couldn't..." Her voice caught. "I couldn't let you feel that way. Not after you trusted me enough to let me help." Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. Not desperately, like before, but gently, deliberately. "I spent 15 years building walls," he said, keeping everyone at a distance, trusting no one except Marcus. It was safer that way, easier, but also, he paused, searching for words. Lonely. So lonely I forgot what connection felt like. And now I'm sitting in a cabin with a woman I met 12 hours ago, and I feel more connected to another person than I have in years. His gray eyes held hers. "You've shown me something I'd forgotten existed. Genuine care. No agenda, no angle. Just humanity." Claire felt something shift inside her chest, like ice breaking up after a long winter. "You've shown me something too. What it feels like to matter. To have someone depend on me for something real. Not just coffee refills and correct change." They sat in the growing darkness, hands clasped. Two people who'd found each other by pure chance and recognized something familiar in the other's loneliness. "What happens now?" Claire asked quietly. "I don't know. The Volkovs are still out there. My world is still waiting. Your life is still different now," Claire finished. "It's different now. I can feel it. Even if we walk away from this, even if we go back to our separate lives, I'll be different. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. Ask me when we survive this. Dominic smiled. A real smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, softening the hard edges, revealing the man beneath the armor. Outside, the forest was dark and quiet. The world continued on, unaware that in a small cabin on a mountainside, two people were rebuilding themselves piece by piece, learning to be seen, learning to be brave. Claire stood to light another lantern. As she did, her foot knocked against something, her old art supplies stacked in a corner and forgotten. She knelt and opened the box. Sketchbooks, charcoal, pencils, all there, waiting. You draw? Dominic asked. Used to, haven't in years. Why not? Claire looked at the supplies, then at Dominic, then at the cabin around them. I think I forgot I was allowed to. You're allowed to, Dominic said softly. Whatever happens next, promise me you won't forget that. She pulled out a sketchbook and a pencil. The paper was yellowed, the pages waiting. She sat down and began to draw, not the city this time, but Dominic's face in the lamplight. The sharp lines, the gray eyes, the vulnerability she'd discovered beneath the surface. What are you drawing? He asked. Someone who let me see them, Claire said. They stayed like that as the night deepened. Claire drawing, Dominic watching, both of them present in a moment they'd remember for the rest of their lives. The moment when two strangers became something more. Not quite friends, not quite lovers, but two souls who'd recognized each other in the darkness and chosen not to look away. Around midnight, Dominic finally fell into real sleep. Not fever sleep or pain sleep, but genuine rest. His breathing evened out, his face relaxed. Claire covered him with another quilt and sat back in her chair, watching him. The phone Marcus had left buzzed softly. A text. Status. Claire typed back. Stable. Fever broke. He's sleeping. Good. Keep him safe. You're doing great. She set the phone down and looked at the gun on the table. She picked it up, feeling its weight, its cold reality. Tomorrow she'd ask Dominic to show her how to use it properly. Tomorrow they'd start planning what came next. But tonight, they'd earned a moment of peace. Claire opened her sketchbook again and continued drawing. The cabin, the lamplight, the quiet sanctuary they'd found. She drew for hours, her hand moving across the page, remembering what it felt like to create, to make something that mattered. When dawn finally came, painting the windows with soft gray light, Claire was still awake. She'd drawn a dozen sketches, studies of Dominic's face, the cabin's interior, her own hands covered in charcoal and memory. She felt different, transformed, like something inside her that had been sleeping had finally woken up. Dominic stirred as sunlight touched his face. He opened his eyes and found Claire watching him. Morning, he said. Morning. You stayed up all night. Someone had to make sure you kept breathing. He smiled slightly. I'm not going anywhere. Good. Claire closed her sketchbook. Because we need to figure out what happens next. Yeah. Dominic tried to sit up, managing better than before. We do. But before they could plan, before they could think about the future, Dominic's phone, the one Marcus had left, began to ring. Not a text this time. A call. Claire and Dominic looked at each other. It was barely 6 a.m. Marcus wouldn't call unless something was wrong. Dominic answered, putting it on speaker. Marcus, boss. Marcus's voice was tight with tension. We have a problem. The Volkovs found your apartment. They found Claire's place. They're looking wider now, checking property records, known associates. It's only a matter of time. How long? 24 hours. Maybe less. They're motivated and they have resources. A pause. Boss, you need to decide. Run or fight. But decide soon. Dominic looked at Claire, and she saw the weight of decision settling on him. Run meant abandoning everything he'd built. Fight meant bringing danger directly to them. I'll call you back, Dominic said. Give me an hour. He ended the call and the cabin fell into heavy silence. So, Claire said quietly, what do we do? Dominic met her eyes, and in them she saw steel and determination. We fight, but only if you're willing to stay. This isn't your battle, Claire. You can still walk away. Claire thought about her life before. The diner, the apartment, the invisible existence. She thought about the past 24 hours, about feeling alive for the first time in years. What if I don't want to walk away? She said. Dominic's expression shifted. Surprise, hope, something deeper. Then we do this together. Together, Claire agreed. Outside, the sun rose higher, burning away the morning mist. A new day, a new choice. Whatever happened next, they would face it side by side. Two people who'd found each other in the darkness, choosing to step into the light. By the time Marcus arrived at the cabin 36 hours later, Dominic could stand without swaying. The wound was healing. The fever was gone. But more importantly, the man who'd stumbled into Claire's diner bleeding and desperate had transformed into someone else entirely. Someone ready to reclaim his life. The Volkovs are getting closer, Marcus reported, spreading a map across the cabin's small table. But I've got good news too. Some of their own people are unhappy with how they handled this. Violence brings attention. Attention brings problems. Dominic studied the map, his finger tracing routes through the city. So we offer them a deal. Peace with conditions. They keep their territory, I keep mine. No more bloodshed. And if they refuse, then we show them we're not as weak as they think. Dominic's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I've made calls. We have allies. They thought killing me would end this. Instead, it unified everyone they've been terrorizing. Claire watched from the doorway, seeing him shift back into the man who commanded empires. But when his eyes found hers, something softer remained. The connection they'd forged in the darkness. What about witnesses? Marcus asked, glancing at Claire. She's a liability now. They'll come after her to get to you. No, Dominic said firmly. She's under my protection. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Boss, that's non-negotiable. Dominic stood walking to Claire. She saved my life. She stays if she wants to stay. Claire's heart hammered. This was the moment. The choice that would define everything. Your old life is gone, Dominic said quietly, only to her. I can offer you protection, security, freedom from that diner, but it means entering my world. Understanding what that means. I know what it means. Do you? His gray eyes searched hers. It's dangerous, complicated, nothing like the safe life you had. That safe life was killing me slowly. Claire took his hand. You said I showed you what it meant to be seen. You did the same for me. I'm not walking away from that. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Relief, joy, vulnerability. Then you stay. I stay. Marcus made a sound of resignation. Boss, you're going to give me gray hair. Too late for that. Dominic smiled. That rare, genuine smile Claire had come to treasure. All right, let's go home. We have a city to take back. 3 weeks later, Claire stood in the penthouse apartment Dominic had insisted she take. Safe, secure, hers. Through the windows, Portland spread out below. The city she'd once moved through invisibly, now a place where she mattered. The Volkovs had taken the deal. Peace, tenuous but holding. Dominic had returned to power, but different now, more careful, more human. And Claire? She'd enrolled in art classes, started painting again. The walls of her new apartment were covered in cityscapes. Portland through the eyes of someone who'd learned to see beauty in darkness. Dominic appeared in the doorway, no longer wounded, but still carrying the scar that would remind them both of the night that changed everything. You ready? He asked. For what? Dinner. Marcus is cooking. He thinks we need to celebrate surviving. Claire smiled, setting down her brush. We did more than survive. Yeah? Dominic crossed to her, pulling her close. We found each other. As the sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, two people who'd been invisible stood together, finally seen, finally alive, finally home. Together.